On May 31, 2003, Eric Rudolph was arrested behind a grocery store in rural western North Carolina after 5 years on the run. He was accused of detonating a bomb outside a Birmingham, Alabama abortion clinic on January 29, 1998, killing a police officer and critically injuring a nurse. He was also charged with setting off a bomb that killed one person and injured 150 others in a park in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, during the 1996 Olympics. There is also evidence that Rudolph was involved in the 1997 bombings of a gay nightclub and a building that housed an abortion clinic. Rudolph came under suspicion when someone saw a man believed to be Rudolph leaving the scene of the Birmingham bombing. A truck registered to Rudolph was spotted moments later. In the days following the bombing, law enforcement agents searched a storage locker rented by Rudolph and found nails like those in the devices used to bomb the clinic and an Atlanta building that housed an abortion clinic. Similarities also linked the nails to the bomb set off during the Olympics. Rudolph's crime spree was motivated by his extreme political beliefs. He was a member of a white supremacist group called the Army of God. His relatives told authorities that Rudolph was an ardent anti-Semite who claimed that the Holocaust never happened and that the Jews control the media and the government. Ironically, soon after he was arrested, the court-appointed attorney Richard S. Jaffe, a practicing Jew, to lead Rudolph's defense team. On April 8, 2005, Rudolph agreed to plead guilty to all the attacks he was accused of committing to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms. The Rudolph case illustrates the undercurrent of violence that is still all too common on the American landscape. But although the Rudolph case is a shocking reminder of the damage that a single person can inflict on the public, the overall crime rate seems to be in decline. And although the United States has the reputation of being an extremely violent nation, violence rates here are dropping while they are increasing abroad. This chapter reviews major crime problems facing the justice system. It also discusses how crime is measured and what we know about criminal conduct. What causes the rise and fall in crime rates? Who commits crime, and what are the crime patterns that the criminal justice system must confront on a daily basis? Crime in the United States. Crimes such as the ones committed by Eric Rudolph have become an all too familiar and disturbing aspect of life in the United States. Both the poor and the affluent engage in criminal activity. Crime cuts across racial, class, and gender lines. It involves some acts that shock the conscience, such as Rudolph's violent spree, but others may seem to be relatively harmless human foibles. Some involve strangers, so-called predatory criminals who care little for the lives of their victims, whereas others, including date rape and spouse, child, elderly, and sexual abuse, involve family members, friends, or trusted associates. Such acts are referred to as intimate violence. In Chapter 1, we discuss terrorism and cybercrime, 2 newly emerging crimes that challenge the justice system. Although these new crimes represent critical issues, the criminal justice system must still confront traditional criminal conduct involving violence, theft, and breaches of the public order. What are some of the most significant of these crimes that concern most Americans? Violent crime. Americans are bombarded with television news stories and newspaper articles featuring grisly accounts of violent gangs, serial murder, child abuse, and rape. Although rates of violent crime have declined significantly, violence rates in the United States still exceed those of most other industrialized nations. What are the forms of violence that most people fear? Gang violence. After remaining dormant for many years, organized youth gangs today terrorize neighborhoods in urban communities around the United States. From Boston to Los Angeles, gangs have become actively involved in drug distribution, extortion, and violence. Whereas youth gangs once relied on group loyalty and emotional involvement with neighborhood turf to encourage membership, modern gangs seem more motivated by the quest for drug profits and street power. It is common for drug cliques to form within gangs or for established drug dealers to make use of gangbangers for protection and distribution services. As a consequence, gang-related killings have become so commonplace that the term gang homicide is now recognized as a separate and unique category of criminal behavior. At one time, gang activity was restricted to the nation's largest cities, especially Philadelphia, New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, and Chicago. These cities still have large gang populations, but today, smaller and medium-sized cities such as Cleveland and Columbus, Ohio, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, have also been the locus of gang activity. One reason that gang populations are swelling is that established urban gang members migrate to other locales to set up local branches. The most recent surveys indicate that active in the United States are more than 24,000 gangs, with more than 760,000 gang members. About 80% of larger cities with a population of more than 50,000 reported persistent gang activity. Towns, 28%, and rural areas, 12%, are less likely to experience gangs. Multiple murder. On April 20th, 1999, the nation's most deadly school shooting occurred at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. Two heavily armed students, Eric Harris, 18, and Dylan Klebold, 17, members of a secretive student group called the Trenchcoat Mafia, went on a shooting spree that claimed the lives of 12 students and one teacher and wounded 24 others, many seriously, as police SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics teams, closed in. The two boys committed suicide in the school library, leaving authorities to puzzle over the cause of their deadly act. Later, their friends described Harris and Klebold as outsiders whose behavior may have been triggered by their perceived victimization at the hands of school athletes. There are three different types of multiple killers. Mass murderers kill many victims in a single violent outburst. Spree killers spread their murderous outburst over a few days or weeks. Serial killers kill over a long period of time, but typically assume a normal identity between murders. Mass murderers such as Harris and Klebold, serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer of Milwaukee, and spree killers such as John Allen Muhammad, the DC sniper, have become familiar to the US public. The threat of the unknown, random, and deranged assailant has become a part of modern reality. There is no single explanation for serial, spree, or mass murder. Such widely disparate factors as mental illness, sexual frustration, neurological damage, child abuse and neglect, smothering maternal relationships, and childhood anxiety have been suggested as possible causes. However, most experts view multiple murderers as sociopaths who from early childhood demonstrate bizarre behavior such as torturing animals, enjoy killing, are immune to their victims' suffering, and bask in the media limelight when caught. Intimate violence. Although violent attacks by strangers produce the most fear and create the most graphic headlines, Americans face greater physical danger from people with whom they are in close and intimate contact: spouses, other relatives, and dating partners. One area of intimate violence that has received a great deal of media attention is child abuse, which is any physical or emotional trauma to a child for which no reasonable explanation, such as an accident or ordinary disciplinary practices, can be found. Child abuse can result from physical beatings administered by hands, feet, weapons, belts, or sticks, or from burning. The last data available indicate that an estimated 3 million children were alleged to have been abused or neglected and received investigations or assessments by state and local child protective services (CPS) agencies. Approximately 870,000 children were determined to be actual victims of child maltreatment. Although the rate of reported child abuse has been in decline, the problem has not been eliminated. About 12 children for every 1,000 children in the population were victims of some form of abuse or neglect. Regardless of how it is defined, the effects of abuse can be devastating. Children who have experienced some form of maltreatment have a devalued sense of self, a mistrust of others, a tendency toward attributing hostility toward others in situations where the intentions of others are ambiguous, a tendency to generate antagonistic solutions to social problems, and a suspicion of close relationships. Hate crimes. Hate crimes or bias crimes are criminal acts directed toward a particular person or members of a group merely because the targets share a discernible racial, ethnic, religious, or gender characteristic. Hate crimes can include the desecration of a house of worship or cemetery, harassment of a minority group family that has moved into a previously all-white neighborhood, or a racially motivated murder. Hate crimes are defined as criminal acts directed toward a particular person or members of a group targeted because of their racial, ethnic, religious, or gender characteristics. Crimes usually involve convenient, vulnerable targets who are incapable of fighting back. For example, there have been numerous reported incidents of teenagers attacking vagrants and the homeless in an effort to rid their town or neighborhood of people they consider undesirable. Another group targeted for hate crimes is gay men and women. Gay bashing has become common in US cities. Currently, the FBI annually records about 8,000 hate crime incidents motivated by bias against a race, religion, disability, ethnicity, or sexual orientation that involve more than 9,000 victims and 7,000 offenders. Public order crimes are behaviors considered illegal because they run counter to existing moral standards. Obscenity and prostitution are considered public order crimes. Public order crimes. Societies have long banned or limited behaviors that are believed to run contrary to social norms, customs, and values. These behaviors are commonly referred to as public order crimes or victimless crimes, although the latter term can be misleading. Public order crimes involve acts that interfere with how society operates and functions. These acts are criminalized because those who shape the law believe that they conflict with social norms, prevailing moral rules, and current public opinion. Public order crimes are those that disrupt the public order and the ability of people to function efficiently. Included within this category are sexually related crimes such as prostitution, trafficking in pornography, and trafficking in illegal substances. As the International Justice feature shows, these problems are certainly not unique to the United States. Child prostitution on the German-Czech border. Kathin Schauer, a social worker with the Caro Social Project, has been working since 1994 on both sides of the German-Czech border as part of a group that looks after women and children involved in prostitution. She helps the kids on the streets, distributes birth control supplies, goes to brothels to hand out information on AIDS prevention, and supports women and children who seek a way out of prostitution. Since 1996, she has gathered information from a variety of sources, including prostitutes, social workers, and police, on the scale of child prostitution in the German-Czech border region in the district of Karlovy Vary, Carlsbad. In addition to close observation of around 500 sexually exploited children and youth, she has conducted more than 200 interviews with people involved in the sex trade. The interviewees included 40 children and young people between the ages of 6 and 17 years, 100 adults in prostitution in the region, 11 staff members of social institutions, 10 police officers, as well as 50 people at the border checkpoints. Child prostitution at the German-Czech border, the dimensions. The commercial sexual exploitation of children in the German-Czech border districts began to flourish in 1996 and has increased substantially in the years since. A key reason for the increasing demand is that larger numbers of tourists specifically request children. The children have been observed mainly along the Europastrasse E48 and E49 and near the small connecting roads to the German border checkpoints, as well as in the Czech towns near the border. The girls and boys hang out near petrol stations, bus stops, and restaurants. Within towns, they are found in parks, in front of supermarkets, at the entrances of gambling halls and houses, and at the railway station. In one small town, children were observed showing themselves in the windows of a brothel-like institution. In some areas, the children wait for tourists in cars or by windows. Women holding babies and small children have also been seen touting for pedosexuals from Germany. Small babies and children up to 6 years of age are usually offered to tourists by women. Children older than 7 years are usually accompanied by a male adolescent or an adult. In parking lots and in front of supermarkets, one frequently sees small children who address only German men, "Can you take me with you for a while?" Or who beg for money or food, "Can you buy me an ice cream?" Many of the children get inside the cars of German tourists and drive away with them. Older children from 8 years on negotiate prices and sexual services. They offer themselves with questions such as, "Do you want sex?" The men usually drive with their victim to a place they are familiar with where they will not be observed. These places may be on the outskirts of a town, in nearby forests or parks, in isolated garages, or in empty side streets. Or the abusers go with their victims, sometimes accompanied by a pimp to a nearby apartment. The victims. Many of the children were raped or sexually abused before they became involved in commercial sexual exploitation. Poverty, sexual abuse, and family obligation are the main reasons given by children for entering into prostitution. The children usually receive between 5 to 25 euros in payment. Sometimes they just receive sweets. Some sex tourists take the children for a meal or give financial support to their families. The trafficking and sale of children. The study gave clear indications that organized trafficking in children exists. Children from other regions of the Czech Republic and from Central and Eastern European states are trafficked to the border regions or from there to Germany in order to be sexually exploited. Children from remote areas of the Czech Republic, the Slovak Republic, and other countries such as Moldova, Ukraine, Lithuania, and the Russian Federation were observed and questioned. Their statements, and in particular the interviews with adult prostitutes, made it clear that gangs of pimps systematically drag minors to the German-Czech border regions and force them into prostitution. Some of the prostitutes have already worked in several European countries. One girl from North Bohemia was sold into prostitution when she was 14 years old. First, she worked in a brothel in a Czech city, then moved on to several different places, finally to end up in the German-Czech border region. Later, she and some other girls crossed the border into Germany by taxi and went on to Strasbourg, where pimps forced her into street prostitution. Critical Thinking 1. Devise a plan to limit the international trafficking of women and children. In your plan, would you focus on punishing traffickers, helping victims, or controlling people who serve as customers? 2. If prostitution were legalized, would international trafficking be terminated? Substance abuse. The United States has been waging a war on drugs for some time. There are indications that at least among teens, drug use has stabilized and/or declined. The most recent Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, YRBS, found that youth use of drugs, including marijuana, methamphetamine, and steroids, has declined significantly. 384% of high school students had used marijuana at least once in their lives, compared to 424% in 2001, a 94% reduction. 202% of high school students reported using marijuana at least once in the 30 days before taking the survey, down from 239% in 2001, a 154% reduction. 62% reported lifetime methamphetamine use in 2005 versus 98% in 2001, a 367% reduction. 4% of students reported using steroids at least once in their lifetimes, down from 50% in 2003, a 20% reduction. 255% of students reported binge drinking in the past 30 days, down from 299% in 2001, a 147% reduction. Although most of the focus is on drugs such as cocaine and heroin, the most commonly abused substance, alcohol, is legal, easily obtained, and suspected of being involved in half of all U.S. murders, suicides, and accidental deaths. Alcohol-related deaths number 100,000 a year, far more than deaths by all illegal drugs combined. Strong links are found between alcohol abuse and violent crime and other antisocial behaviors, including episodes of assaultive behavior and vandalism. 15. Strong links also exist between alcohol consumption and certain types of homicide, especially those that occur during robberies and other criminal offenses. 16. The association between alcohol and crime is strong, but there are indications that people who use illicit drugs are also more likely to engage in criminal acts. The Department of Health and Human Services' most recent annual survey on youth and violence found that about half of the adolescents who used marijuana in the past year also engaged in violent behavior, and that more than two-thirds, 69% of the adolescents who used methamphetamine in the past year engaged in violent behavior. National surveys of people who have been arrested for serious crimes find that drug abuse is quite common. Exhibit 21. Alcohol, legal and easily obtained, is related to half of all U.S. murders, suicides, and accidental deaths. Alcohol-related deaths number 100,000 a year, far more than deaths related to all illegal drugs combined. Although the drug-crime connection is powerful, the true relationship between them is still uncertain because many users have had a history of criminal activity before the onset of their substance abuse, and it is possible that chronic criminal offenders begin to abuse drugs and alcohol after they have engaged in crime. That is, crime causes drug abuse. Substance abusers turn to a life of crime to support their habits. That is, drug abuse causes crime. A drug use and crime co-occur in individuals, that is, both crime and drug abuse are caused by some other common factor, e.g., risk takers use drugs and also commit crime. 19. Drug users suffer social problems, e.g., heavy drinking and/or mental instability, that are linked to crime. Economic crimes, millions of property and theft-related crimes occur each year. Most are the work of amateur or occasional criminals whose decision to steal is spontaneous and whose acts are unskilled, unplanned, and haphazard. Many thefts, ranging in seriousness from shoplifting to burglary, are committed by school-age youths who are unlikely to enter into a criminal career. Added to the pool of amateur thieves are the millions of adults whose behavior may occasionally violate the criminal shoplifters, pilferers, tax cheats, but whose main source of income comes from conventional means and whose self-identity is non-criminal. Most of these property crimes occur when an immediate opportunity or situational majors bill inducement arises to commit a crime. Professional thieves, in contrast, derive a significant portion of their income from crime. Professionals do not delude themselves that their acts are impulsive, one-time efforts. They also do not employ elaborate rationalizations to excuse the harmfulness of their action. Shoplifting doesn't really hurt anyone. Professionals pursue their craft with vigor, attempting to learn from older, experienced criminals the techniques that will earn them the most money with the least risk. Their numbers are relatively few, but professionals engage in crimes that produce greater losses to society and perhaps cause more significant social harm. Typical forms include pickpocketing, burglary, shoplifting, forgery and counterfeiting, extortion and swindling. Some thieves take advantage of social disorder to ply their trade. Taking no chances, this shopkeeper posted a hand-painted sign outside his New Orleans business to warn away looters in the wake of Hurricane Katrina in September 2005. White-collar crime. Some criminal activities involve people and institutions whose purpose is illegal profit in the course of their occupation and/or business transactions. Included within the category of white-collar crime are such acts as income tax evasion, credit card fraud, and bank fraud. Some white-collar criminals also use their positions of trust in business or government to commit crimes. Their activities might include soliciting bribes or kickbacks, as well as embezzlement. Other white-collar criminals set up businesses for the sole purpose of victimizing the general public. They engage in land swindles, securities theft, medical fraud, and so on. And in addition to acting as individuals, white-collar crimes include criminal conspiracies designed to improve the market share or profitability of corporations. This type of white-collar crime, which includes antitrust violations, price fixing, and false advertising, is known as corporate crime. Violations of safety standards, pollution of the environment, and industrial accidents due to negligence can be classified as corporate violence. It is difficult to estimate the extent and influence of white-collar crime because it is common to ignore the victims who suffer the consequences of such crime. Some experts place its total monetary value in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Beyond their monetary cost, white-collar crimes often damage property and kill people. White-collar crime also destroys confidence, saps the integrity of commercial life, and has the potential for devastating destruction. White-collar crimes involve the violation of rules that control business enterprises. They can include employee pilferage, bribery, commodities law violations, mail fraud, computer fraud, environmental law violations, embezzlement, internet scams, extortion, forgery, insurance fraud, price fixing, and environmental pollution. Corporate crimes committed by a corporation or by individuals who control the corporation or other business entity for such purposes as illegally increasing market share, avoiding taxes, or thwarting competition. Organized crime involves the criminal activity of people and organizations whose acknowledged purpose is economic gain through illegal enterprise. 23. These criminal cartels provide the outlawed goods and services demanded by the general public: prostitution, narcotics, gambling, loan sharking, pornography, and untaxed liquor and cigarettes. In addition, organized criminals infiltrate legitimate organizations such as unions to drain off their funds and profits for illegal purposes. Federal and state agencies have been dedicated to wiping out organized crime, and some well-publicized arrests have resulted in the imprisonment of important leaders. The membership of the traditional Italian and Irish crime families has dropped an estimated 50% over 20 years. However, new groups including Russian and Eastern European, Hispanic, and African American gangs have filled the vacuum created by federal prosecutors. For example, more than 2,000 Russian immigrants are believed to be involved in criminal activity, primarily in Russian enclaves in New York City. Beyond extortion from fellow Eastern European immigrants, Russian organized crime groups have engaged in narcotics trafficking, fencing stolen property, money laundering, and other traditional organized crime schemes. How much crime is there? How do we measure it? In order to plan effective crime control policies, it is important to understand how many crimes take place every year, what the trends and patterns in crime are, and who commits crimes. Without such knowledge, it would be impossible to know whether policies were effective and whether they were worth the cost. For example, although many people advocate the use of the death penalty to deter murder, it would be impossible to know whether capital punishment is an effective deterrent unless murder rates and trends could be calculated. Capital punishment might be justified if murder rates fell dramatically soon after the death penalty was imposed. If, however, imposition of the death penalty had little if any effect on murder rates, then justifications for its use would be damaged. Because obtaining accurate crime data statistics is so essential, there are many career opportunities for statisticians in the criminal justice system. See the Careers in Criminal Justice feature. Today, 3 significant methods are used to measure the nature and extent of crime: official data, victim data, and self-report data. Official data, uniform crime reports. Official data on crime refer to those crimes known to and recorded by the nation's police departments. The Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs, issued by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, are the best known and most widely cited source of official criminal statistics files. The FBI receives and compiles records from more than 17,000 police departments that serve a majority of the U.S. population. The report's major unit of analysis involves Part 1 crimes, murder and non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Exhibit 22 defines these crimes. The FBI tallies and annually publishes the number of reported offenses by city, county, standard metropolitan statistical area, and geographical divisions of the United States. In addition to these statistics, the UCR shows the number and characteristics, age, race, and gender of individuals who have been arrested for these and all other crimes, Part 2 crimes, except traffic violations. Careers in criminal justice, statistician duties and characteristics of the job. Statisticians use numerical data to examine, understand, and predict various phenomena. In the criminal justice system, they use their skills to study crime rates and trends and to create more accurate methods of crime measurement. Usually, statisticians focus on demographic information to analyze people's behaviors and trends within a society. A statistician's job includes designing surveys, deciding which methods should be used to analyze the data collected, and making predictions based on patterns within the data. Once this analysis is complete, statisticians will present these data, often in the form of written reports or scholarly articles. Although the concepts and mathematical calculations they perform may be abstract, the knowledge they produce is often used to describe events in the real world and to impel action on the part of those who read the findings of the researcher. Statisticians will generally work normal hours in a comfortable office setting. However, certain projects may require longer hours and travel to sites where data are being collected. Statisticians may earn a master's or doctorate, but their education is never fully complete because they need to keep up to date on the latest findings in their field and be knowledgeable of the newest methods of analysis. Statisticians must also attend conferences to learn the latest developments in their field and the findings of other statisticians. They can work for a variety of employers, including private companies involved in security, and for private research institutes such as the RAND Corporation, although most work for the government or at colleges and universities. Like other academics, statisticians will research, publish, and teach. It should be noted that the skills a statistician has are useful beyond their pure mathematical purposes and can be adapted for work in various fields such as criminology and criminal justice. Job outlook: steady growth is predicted in the number of opportunities for employment as a statistician in the near future. However, there is expected to be faster growth of jobs that will most often not present themselves under the title of statistician, but under different titles in various fields requiring the skills of a statistician. For example, criminologists and psychologists who conduct research will need the strong analytical skills and statistical knowledge possessed by statisticians. Statisticians are increasingly being employed in the private sector as market analysts who look at purchasing trends, but statisticians are still employed primarily by state, local, and federal agencies and by colleges and universities. Salary statisticians have a median annual salary of $58,020. The majority of statisticians earn between $42,770 and $80,690. At the extremes, a small percentage of statisticians will earn around $32,070, and the highest paid will earn more than $100,000. Those with master's and doctorate degrees will have increasingly higher salaries than those with a bachelor's degree. Opportunities will be best for those whose training is not purely statistics-based, but combined with another disciplinary focus such as sociology or criminology. Qualifications: statisticians. Primary requirements for employment are educational. A bachelor's degree in statistics or mathematics sets a solid base for more education, either in further study of math or in another area of interest. Employment in this field requires an interest and skill with numbers and analytical thinking. Statisticians must not only collect and interpret potentially complex data, they must also be able to explain their findings and predictions to non-statisticians. Finally, multiple computer programs can be used to collect and examine data, and it will be beneficial for future statisticians to be familiar with the ones most commonly used in their field of interest. Education and training. Although a bachelor's degree in the appropriate field can gain a statistician entry into this field, to advance further education in the form of a master's or doctoral degree is necessary. Exhibit 22, FBI Part 1. Crimes: criminal homicide, 1 murder and non-negligent manslaughter, the willful, non-negligent killing of one human being by another. Deaths caused by negligence, attempts to kill, assaults to kill, suicides, accidental deaths, and justifiable homicides are excluded. Justifiable homicides are limited to the killing of a felon by a law enforcement officer in the line of duty and the killing of a felon by a private citizen. 2. Manslaughter by negligence, the killing of another person through gross negligence. Traffic fatalities are excluded. Forcible rape, the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly and against her will, included are rapes by force and attempts or assaults to rape. Statutory offences, no force used victim under the age of consent, are excluded. Robbery, the taking or attempting to take anything of value from the care, custody, or control of a person or persons by force, by threat of force or violence, or by putting the victim in fear. Aggravated assault, an unlawful attack by one person on another for the purpose of inflicting severe or aggravated bodily injury. This type of assault is usually accompanied by the use of a weapon or by means likely to produce death or great bodily harm. Simple assaults are excluded. Burglary, breaking or entering, the unlawful entry of a structure to commit a felony or theft. Attempted forcible entry is included. Larceny, theft, the unlawful taking, carrying, leading, or riding away of property from the possession or constructive possession of another. Examples are thefts of bicycles or automobile accessories, shoplifting, pickpocketing, or the stealing of any property or article that is not taken by force and violence or by fraud. Attempted larcenies are included. Embezzlement, con games, forgery, worthless checks, and so on are excluded. Motor vehicle theft, the theft or attempted theft of a motor vehicle. A motor vehicle is self-propelled and runs on the surface and not on rails. Specifically excluded from this category are motorboats, construction equipment, airplanes, and farming equipment. Arson, any willful or malicious burning or attempt to burn with or without intent to defraud a dwelling, house, public building, motor vehicle, or aircraft, personal property of another, and so on. Collecting data for the Uniform Crime Reports. The methods used to compile the UCR are complex. Each month, law enforcement agencies report the number of index crimes known to them. These data are collected from records of all crime complaints that victims, officers who discovered the infractions, or other sources reported to these agencies. Whenever criminal complaints are found through investigation to be unfounded or false, they are eliminated from the count. However, the number of offences known is reported to the FBI. Whether or not anyone is arrested for the crime, the stolen property is recovered, or prosecution ensues. In addition, each month law enforcement agencies report how many crimes were cleared. Crimes are cleared in 2 ways. 1, when at least one person is arrested, charged, and turned over to the court for prosecution. Or 2, by exceptional means, when some element beyond police control precludes the physical arrest of an offender. For example, he leaves the country. Data on the number of clearances involving the arrest of only juvenile offenders, data on the value of property stolen and recovered in connection with Part 1 offences, and detailed information about criminal homicide are also reported. Traditionally, slightly more than 20% of all reported Part 1 crimes are cleared by arrest each year. Violent crimes are more likely to be solved than property crimes because police devote more resources to these more serious acts. For these types of crime, witnesses, including the victim, are frequently available to identify offenders, and in many instances the victim and offender were previously acquainted. The UCR uses 3 methods to express crime data. First, the number of crimes reported to the police and arrests made are expressed as raw figures. For example, 16,137 murders occurred in 2005. Second, crime rates per 100,000 people are computed. That is, when the UCR indicates that the murder rate was 55 in 2005, it means that almost 6 people in every 100,000 were murdered between January 1st and December 31st, 2005. This is the equation used. Number of reported crimes, total US population, x 100,000, IGS rate per 100,000. Third, the FBI computes changes in the number and rate of crime over time. The murder rate increased 48% between 2004 and 2005. The official crime data is collected by the FBI from local police departments. Part 1 crimes are considered the most prevalent and serious in the FBI's uniform crime reports. The offences included are the violent crimes of murder and non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery and aggravated assault, and the property crimes of burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. All other crimes are reported to the FBI and are considered Part 2 crimes. These are less serious crimes and misdemeanors, excluding traffic violations. Some crime experts claim victims of many serious crimes do not report these incidents to police, therefore these crimes do not become part of the UCR. The reasons for not reporting vary. Some victims do not trust the police or do not have confidence in their ability to solve crimes. Others do not have property insurance and believe reporting theft is useless. In other cases, victims fear reprisals from an offender's friends or family or their spouse, boyfriend or girlfriend. According to surveys of crime victims, less than 40% of all criminal incidents are reported to the police. Some victims justify non-reporting by stating that the incident was a private matter, nothing could be done, or it was not important enough. These findings indicate that UCR data may significantly underrepresent the total number of annual criminal events. Reporting practices. Some crime experts claim that victims of many serious crimes do not report these incidents to police, therefore these crimes do not become part of the UCR. The reasons for not reporting vary. Some victims do not trust the police or do not have confidence in their ability to solve crimes. Others do not have property insurance and therefore believe it is useless to report theft. In other cases, victims fear reprisals from an offender's friends or family, or, in the case of family violence, from their spouse, boyfriend or girlfriend. 26. According to surveys of crime victims, less than 40% of all criminal incidents are reported to the police. Some of these victims justify non-reporting by stating that the incident was a private matter, that nothing could be done, or that the victimization was not important enough. These findings indicate that the UCR data may significantly underrepresent the total number of annual criminal events. Law enforcement practices. The way that police departments record and report criminal and delinquent activity also affects the validity of UCR statistics. How law enforcement agencies interpret the definitions of crimes may also affect reporting practices. Some departments define crimes loosely, for example, reporting a trespass as a burglary or an assault on a woman as an attempted rape, whereas others pay strict attention to FBI guidelines too. For example, arson may be seriously underreported because many fire departments do not report to the FBI, and those that do define as accidental or spontaneous many fires that may have been set by arsonists. 29. Ironically, boosting police efficiency and professionalism may help increase crime rates. As people develop confidence in the police, they may be more motivated to report crime. Higher crime rates may occur as departments adopt more sophisticated computer technology and hire better educated, better trained employees. Crime rates may also be altered based on the way that law enforcement agencies process UCR data. As the number of employees assigned to dispatching, record keeping, and criminal incident reporting increases, so too will national crime rates. What appears to be a rising crime rate may be simply an artifact of improved police record-keeping ability. 30. Methodological issues. The way data is collected may also influence the validity of the uniform crime reports. The most frequent issues are listed in Exhibit 23. The complex scoring procedure means that many serious crimes are not counted. For example, during an armed bank robbery, the offender strikes a teller with the butt of a handgun. The robber runs from the bank and steals an automobile at the curb. Although the offender has technically committed robbery, aggravated assault, and motor vehicle theft, which are 3 Part 1 offences because robbery is the most serious, it would be the only one recorded in the UCR. National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS, a new form of crime data collection created by the FBI requiring local police agencies to provide at least a brief account of each incident and arrest within 22 crime patterns, including incident, victim, and offender information. NIBRS, the future of the uniform crime reports. Clearly, there must be a more reliable source for crime statistics than the UCR as it stands today. Beginning in 1982, a 5-year redesign effort was undertaken to provide more comprehensive and detailed crime statistics. The effort resulted in the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS, a program that collects data on each reported crime incident. Instead of submitting statements of the kinds of crime that individual citizens report to the police and summary statements of resulting arrests, the new program requires local police agencies to provide at least a brief account of each incident and arrest, including incident, victim, and offender information. Under NIBRS, law enforcement authorities provide information to the FBI on each criminal incident involving 46 specific offenses, including the 8 Part 1 crimes that occur in their jurisdiction. Arrest information on the 46 offenses, plus 11 lesser offenses, is also provided in NIBRS. These expanded crime categories include numerous additional crimes such as blackmail, embezzlement, drug offenses, and bribery. This allows a national database on the nature of crime, victims, and criminals to be developed. Other collected information includes statistics gathered by federal law enforcement agencies, as well as data on hate or bias crimes. Thus far, more than 20 states have implemented their NIBRS program, and 12 others are in the process of finalizing their data collections. When this program is fully implemented and adopted across the nation, it should bring about greater uniformity in cross-jurisdictional reporting and improve the accuracy of official crime data. Victim surveys, the National Crime Victimization Survey. The second source of crime data is surveys that ask crime victims about their encounters with criminals. Because many victims do not report their experiences to the police, victim surveys are considered a method of getting at the unknown figures of crime. Some surveys are conducted with relatively small groups in an effort to find out if personal status influences victimization risk. One recent survey of gang members found that gang youths not only commit a great number of crimes, but are also more likely to experience violent victimization than are non-gang members. Although many youths claim that they joined gangs for protection, in reality gang membership offers little in the way of security and much in the way of danger. The most important and widely used victim survey, the National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS, is sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Statistics of the U.S. Department of Justice. In these national surveys, housing units are selected using a complex multi-stage sampling technique. Each year, data are obtained from a large nationally representative sample. In 2005, more than 77,000 households, representing a total of more than 134,000 people aged 12 or older, were interviewed. People are asked to report their experiences with crimes such as rape, sexual assault, robbery, assault, theft, household burglary, and motor vehicle theft. Due to the care with which the samples are drawn and the high completion rate, NCVS data are considered a relatively unbiased, valid estimate of all victimizations for the target crimes included in the survey. The NCVS finds that many crimes go unreported to police. The UCR shows that slightly more than 90,000 rapes or attempted rapes occur each year, but the NCVS estimates that almost 200,000 actually occur. The reason for such discrepancies is that fewer than half of violent crimes, fewer than one-third of personal theft crimes, such as pickpocketing, and fewer than half of household thefts are reported to police. Victims seem to report to the police only crimes that involve considerable loss or injury. If we are to believe NCVS findings, the official UCR statistics do not provide an accurate picture of the crime problem because many crimes go unreported to the police. Like the UCR, the NCVS may also suffer from some problems. These are listed in Exhibit 24, National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS, the nation's primary source of information on criminal victimization. Each year, data are obtained from a national sample that measures the frequency, characteristics, and consequences of criminal victimization by such crimes as rape, sexual assault, robbery, assault, theft, household burglary, and motor vehicle theft. Each sentence can be long if the input requires it, but must not exceed 30 words. If a sentence is longer, split it into 2 or more natural sentences without altering the content. Self-report surveys. The problems associated with official statistics have led many crime experts to seek alternative sources of information in assessing the true extent of crime patterns. The data provided by the NCVS are important, but they cannot reveal much about the personality, attitudes, and behavior of individual offenders. Neither the NCVS nor the UCR is of much value in charting the extent of one of the nation's most important social problems, substance abuse in the teenage population. To address these issues, crime experts have developed the self-report survey. Most often, self-report surveys are administered to groups of subjects through a mass distribution of questionnaires. Although some surveys can identify the subjects, most are given anonymously so that respondents feel freer to tell the truth about their behaviors. The basic assumption of self-report studies is that because anonymity and confidentiality are assured, people will be encouraged to describe their illegal activities accurately. Because most self-report instruments contain items measuring subjects' attitudes, values, personal characteristics, and behaviors, the data obtained from them can be used for various purposes. These include testing theories, measuring attitudes toward crime, and computing the association between crime and important social variables such as family relations, educational attainment, and income. Statistical analysis of the responses can be used to determine such issues as A. Are people who report being abused as children also more likely to use drugs as adults? And B. Does school failure lead to delinquency? Are self-reports accurate? Critics of self-report studies frequently suggest that it is unreasonable to expect people to candidly admit illegal acts. They have nothing to gain, and the ones taking the greatest risk are the ones with official records who may be engaging in the most criminality. In addition, some people may exaggerate their criminal acts, forget some of them, or be confused about what is being asked. Some surveys contain an overabundance of trivial offences, such as shoplifting small amounts of items or using false identification, which are often lumped together with serious crimes to form a total crime index. Consequently, comparisons between groups can be highly misleading. Various techniques have been used to verify self-report data. The known group method compares youths who are known to be offenders with those who are not to see whether the former report more delinquency. Research shows that when kids are asked if they have ever been arrested or sent to court, their responses accurately reflect their true life experiences. Another approach is to use peer informants who can verify the honesty of a subject's answers. Subjects can also be tested twice to see if their answers remain stable. Sometimes questions are designed to reveal respondents who are lying. For example, an item might say, "I have never done anything wrong in my life." Polygraphs, commonly known as lie detectors, have also been used to verify the responses given on self-report surveys. The results often validate the accuracy of self-report survey data. Research studies also indicate a substantial association between official processing and self-reported crime. Although these findings are encouraging, nagging questions remain about the validity of self-reports. Research indicates that offenders with the most extensive prior criminality are also the ones most likely to falsify their behavior. Serious chronic offenders are usually unwilling to cooperate with self-report. Institutionalized youths are not generally represented in the self-report surveys. They are not only more delinquent than the general population, but are also considerably more misbehaving than the most delinquent youths identified in the typical self-report survey. Self-reports may measure only non-serious, occasional delinquents while ignoring hardcore chronic offenders who may be institutionalized and unavailable for self-reports. Self-report survey, a research approach that questions large groups of subjects, typically high school students, about their own participation in delinquent or criminal acts. Are the various sources of crime statistics compatible? Each has strengths and weaknesses. The FBI survey is carefully tallied and contains data on the number of murders and people arrested, information that the other data sources lack. However, this survey omits the many crimes that victims choose not to report to police, and it is subject to the reporting caprices of individual police departments. The NCVS contains unreported crimes and important information on the personal characteristics of victims, but the data consist of estimates made from relatively limited samples of the total US population. Because of this, even narrow fluctuations in the rates of some crimes can have a major impact on findings. It also relies on personal recollections that may be inaccurate. The NCVS does not include data on important crime patterns, including murder and drug abuse. Self-report surveys can provide information on the personal characteristics of offenders, such as their attitudes, values, beliefs, and psychological profiles, which is unavailable from any other source. Yet at their core, self-reports rely on the honesty of criminal offenders and drug abusers, a population not generally known for accuracy and integrity. Despite these differences, several prominent crime experts have concluded that the data sources are more compatible than was first believed. Although their tallies of crimes are certainly not in sync, the crime patterns and trends they record are often similar. All three sources generally agree about the personal characteristics of serious criminals, such as age and gender, and where and when crime occurs, such as urban areas, nighttime, and summer months. Therefore, what do these data sources tell us about crime rates, patterns, and trends? Thompson now improve your grade on the exam with personalized study. For reinforcement resources and a mastery check of crime statistics, go to www.thompson.com. Thompson Now. Official crime trends. Crime is not a new phenomenon. Studies have indicated that a gradual increase in the crime rate, especially in violent crime, occurred from 1830 to 1860. Following the Civil War, this rate increased significantly for about 15 years. Then from 1880 up to the time of World War I, with the possible exception of the years immediately preceding and following the war, the number of reported crimes decreased. After a period of readjustment, the crime rate steadily declined until the Great Depression about 1930, when another crime wave was recorded. As measured by the UCR, crime rates increased gradually following the 1930s until the 1960s, when the growth rate became much greater. The homicide rate, which had actually declined from the 1930s to the 1960s, also began a sharp increase that continued through the 1970s. In 1984, police recorded 11 million crimes. By the following year, however, the number of crimes once again began an upward trend, so that by 1991, police recorded almost 15 million crimes. Since then, the number of crimes has been in decline. Even teenage criminality, a source of national concern, has been in decline during this period, decreasing by about 1/3 over the past 20 years. The teen murder rate, which had remained stubbornly high, has also declined during the past few years. In 2005, slightly less than 12 million Part 1 crimes were reported to police. Figure 22 illustrates the Part 1 crime rate trend between 1960 and 2005. The factors that help explain the upward and downward movement in crime rates are discussed in the Analyzing Criminal Justice Issues feature. Robin Ramsey, 25, is arrested after a police chase in Lancaster, California on March 2, 2006. Ramsey, detained in a car theft case, stole a sheriff's sport utility vehicle and led deputies on a 2-hour pursuit through the Antelope Valley before being captured. Despite such news-making incidents, property crime rates have been in a decade-long decline. Exhibit 23, factors affecting the validity of the Uniform Crime Reports. 1. No federal crimes are reported. 2. Reports are voluntary and vary in accuracy and completeness. 3. Not all police departments submit reports. 4. The FBI uses estimates in its total crime projections. 5. If an offender commits multiple crimes, only the most serious is recorded. Thus, if a narcotics addict rapes, robs, and murders a victim, only the murder is recorded. Consequently, many lesser crimes go unreported. 6. Each act is listed as a single offense for some crimes but not for others. If a man robbed 6 people in a bar, the offense would be listed as 1 robbery, but if he assaulted or murdered them, it would be listed as 6 assaults or 6 murders. 7. Incomplete acts are lumped together with completed ones. 8. Important differences exist between the FBI's definition of certain crimes and those used in several states. 9. Victimless crimes often go undetected. 10. Many cases of child abuse and family violence are unreported. Exhibit 24. Validity issues in the NCVS over-reporting due to victims' misinterpretation of events. A lost wallet may be reported as stolen, or an open door may be viewed as a burglary attempt. Underreporting due to the embarrassment of reporting crime to interviewers, fear of getting in trouble, or simply forgetting an incident. Inability to record the personal criminal activity of those interviewed, such as drug use or gambling. Murder is also not included, for obvious reasons. Sampling errors produce a group of respondents who do not represent the nation as a whole. Inadequate question format that invalidates responses. Some groups, such as adolescents, may be particularly susceptible to error because of question format and wording. Trends in property crimes. The property crimes reported in the UCR include larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson. In 2005, approximately 10 million property crimes were reported, resulting in a rate of about 3,500 per 100,000 population. Property crime rates have declined in recent years, although the drop has not been as dramatic as that experienced by the violent crime rate. Between 1995 and 2005, the total number of property crimes declined by approximately 15%, and the property crime rate decreased by almost 25%. Importantly, unlike violent crimes, the property crime rates declined by almost 2% between 2004 and 2005. Victimization, NCVS, trends. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS, at last count, 2005, residents aged 12 or older experienced about 23 million violent and property victimizations. Similar to UCR trends, reported victimizations have also declined significantly during the 30 years since an estimated 44 million victimizations were recorded in 1973. Between 1993 and 2005, the violent crime rate decreased more than 50%, from 50 to 21 victimizations per 1,000 persons aged 12 or older, and the property crime rate declined at about the same rate, from 319 to 154 crimes per 1,000 households. The main findings of the most recent NCVS survey are as follows. Of the 23 million victimizations, more than 3/4, 18 million, were property crimes, about 20%, 54 million, were crimes of violence, and 1% were personal thefts. For every 1,000 persons aged 12 or older, there occurred 1 rape or sexual assault, 1 assault with injury, and 2 robberies. About 24% of all violent crime incidents were committed by an armed offender, and 7% by an offender with a firearm. And males, African Americans, and youths are more likely to be victimized than are members of other groups' statuses. 48, as figures 24 and 25 show, victim rates have seen an almost steady decline for the past decade. Whether the recent increase in UCR violence rates will be matched by the NCVS remains to be seen. Trends in self-reporting. Self-report results appear to be more stable than the UCR. When the results of recent self-report surveys are compared with various studies conducted over a 20-year period, a uniform pattern emerges. The use of drugs and alcohol increased markedly in the 1970s, leveled off in the 1980s, and then began to increase in the mid-1990s until 1997, when the use of most drugs began to decline. The level of theft, violence, and damage-related crimes seems more stable. Although a self-reported crime wave has not occurred, neither has there been any visible reduction in self-reported criminality. Table 21 contains data from the most recent Monitoring the Future (MTF) survey. A surprising number of these typical teenagers reported involvement in serious criminal behavior. About 13% reported hurting someone badly enough that the victim needed medical care. 7% said they did it more than once. About 27% reported stealing something worth less than $50, and another 9% stole something worth more than $50. 28% reported shoplifting, 13% had damaged school property. The MTF study is also used to measure teen drug use. Data suggests that drug use has declined during the past 2 decades, with a few exceptions such as inhalants and OxyContin. But the MT findings show that drug use has certainly not disappeared. Today, about 15% of 8th graders, 31% of 10th graders, and 39% of 12th graders have used drugs in the past year. About half of all 12th graders have used drugs at least once in their lifetime. Analyzing criminal justice issues, the forces that shape crime trends. Crime experts have identified a variety of social, economic, personal, and demographic factors that influence crime rate trends. Although crime experts are still uncertain about how these factors affect these trends, directional change seems to be associated with changes in crime rates. Age. Because teenagers have extremely high crime rates, crime experts view changes in the population age distribution as having the greatest influence on crime trends. As a general rule, the crime rate follows the proportion of young males in the population. Kids who commit a lot of crime early in childhood are also likely to continue to commit crime in their adolescence and into adulthood. The more teens in the population, the higher the crime rate. The number of juveniles should be increasing over the next decade, and some crime experts fear that this will signal a return to escalating crime rates. However, the number of senior citizens is also expanding, and their presence in the population may have a moderating effect on crime rates. Seniors do not commit much crime, offsetting the effect of teens. Economy, jobs. There is debate over the effect the economy has on crime rates. It seems logical that when the economy turns down, people, especially those who are unemployed, will become more motivated to commit theft crimes. As the economy heats up, crime rates should decline because people can secure good jobs. Why risk crime when there are legitimate opportunities? Recent 2006 research by Thomas Arvanites and Robert Defina found that the crime rate drop in the 1990s could be linked to the strong economy's effect on criminal motivation. However, some criminologists believe that a poor economy may actually help lower crime rates because it limits the opportunity to commit crime. Unemployed parents are at home to supervise children and guard their possessions, and because there is less money to spend, people have fewer valuables worth stealing. Moreover, law-abiding middle-aged workers do not turn to a life of crime when they lose their jobs during an economic downturn. Although the effect of the economy on crime rates is still in question, it is possible that over the long haul, a strong economy will help lower crime rates, whereas long periods of sustained economic weakness and unemployment may eventually lead to increased rates. Crime skyrocketed in the 1930s during the Great Depression. Crime rates fell when the economy surged for almost a decade during the 1990s. Also, economic effects may be very localized. People in one area of the city are doing well, but people living in another part of town may be suffering from unemployment. The economic effect on the crime rates may vary by neighborhood or even by street. Social malaise. As the level of social problems increases, such as single-parent families, dropout rates, racial conflict, and teen pregnancies, do crime rates. Crime rates are correlated with the number of unwed mothers in the population. It is possible that children of unwed mothers need more social services than children in two-parent families. As the number of kids born to single mothers increases, the child welfare system will be taxed and services depleted. The teenage birth rate has trended downward in recent years, and so have crime rates. Racial conflict may also increase crime rates. Areas undergoing racial change, especially those experiencing a migration of minorities into predominantly white neighborhoods, seem prone to significant increases in their crime rate. Whites in these areas may be using violence to protect what they view as their home turf. Racially motivated crimes actually diminish as neighborhoods become more integrated and power struggles are resolved. Abortion. In a controversial work, John J. Donahue III and Stephen D. Levitt found empirical evidence that the recent drop in the crime rate can be attributed to the availability of legalized abortion. In 1973, Roe v. Wade legalized abortion nationwide. Within a few years of Roe v. Wade, more than 1 million abortions were being performed annually, or roughly 1 abortion for every 3 live births. Donahue and Levitt suggest that the crime rate drop, which began approximately 18 years later in 1991, can be tied to the fact that at that point the first groups of potential offenders affected by the abortion decision began reaching the peak age of criminal activity. The researchers found that states that legalized abortion before the rest of the nation were the first to experience decreasing crime rates, and that states with high abortion rates have seen a greater drop in crime since 1985. According to Donahue and Levitt, if abortion were illegal, crime rates might increase by 10 to 20%. If these estimates are correct, legalized abortion can explain about half of the recent decrease in crime. Guns. The availability of firearms may influence the crime rate, especially the proliferation of weapons in the hands of teens. Surveys of high school students indicate that between 6 and 10% carry guns at least some of the time. Guns also cause escalation in the seriousness of crime. As the number of gun-toting students increases, so does the seriousness of violent crime. A schoolyard fight may well turn into murder. Gangs. Another factor that affects crime rates is the explosive growth in teenage gangs. Surveys indicate that there are about 760,000 gang members in the United States. Boys who are members of gangs are far more likely to possess guns than non-gang members. Criminal activity increases when kids join gangs. Drug use. Some experts tie increases in the violent crime rate between 1980 and 1990 to the crack epidemic, which swept the nation's largest cities, and to drug trafficking gangs that fought over drug turf. These well-armed gangs did not hesitate to use violence to control territory, intimidate rivals, and increase market share. As the crack epidemic has subsided, so has the violence in New York City and other metropolitan areas where crack use was rampant. A sudden increase in drug use, on the other hand, may be a harbinger of future increases in the crime rate. Media. Some experts argue that violent media can influence the direction of crime rates. As the availability of media with a violent theme skyrocketed with the introduction of home video players, DVDs, cable TV, computer and video games, and so on, so did teen violence rates. Watching violence on TV is correlated to aggressive behaviors, especially when viewers have a pre-existing tendency toward crime and violence. Research shows that the more often kids watch TV, the more often they get into violent encounters. Justice policy. Some law enforcement experts have suggested that a reduction in crime rates may be attributed to adding large numbers of police officers and using them in aggressive police practices that target quality of life. Crimes such as panhandling, graffiti, petty drug dealing, and loitering. By showing that even the smallest infractions will be dealt with seriously, aggressive police departments may be able to discourage potential criminals from committing more serious crimes. Michael White and his associates have recently shown that cities employing aggressive, focused police work may be able to lower homicide rates in the area. It is also possible that tough laws imposing lengthy prison terms on drug dealers and repeat offenders can affect crime rates. The fear of punishment may inhibit some would-be criminals, and tough laws place a significant number of potentially high-rate offenders behind bars, lowering crime rates. As the nation's prison population has expanded, the crime rate has fallen. Critical thinking. Although crime rates have been declining in the United States, they have been increasing in Europe. Is it possible that factors that correlate with crime rate changes in the United States have little utility in predicting changes in other cultures? What other factors may increase or reduce crime rates? Yes, it's possible that factors correlating with crime rate changes in the United States may not be directly applicable to predicting changes in other cultures due to differences in societal, economic, and cultural contexts. Factors that may influence crime rates include 1. Socioeconomic conditions, poverty, unemployment. 2. Education and job opportunities. 3. Family structure and social support. 4. Law enforcement policies and community engagement. 5. Cultural and societal norms. 6. Economic inequality and access to resources. 7. Mental health and substance abuse support. To understand crime rate changes in different cultures, it's essential to consider the unique context and factors at play in each society.
David.
Oh my goodness. What are you doing?
Can you push the couch in? Can you push the couch? Yeah.
I get it.
You stuck?
No, it's opening up. Push it.
It's scary. I mean, my postpartum was so bad.
He's recording.
What?
He's recording. He's recording you. Hey, tell me, how'd you record?
What the future holds. It is risky to speculate about the future of crime trends because current conditions can change rapidly, but some crime experts have tried to predict future patterns. For example, criminologist James Fox predicts a significant increase in teen violence if current trends persist. The United States has approximately 50 million school-age children, and many are under age 10. This is more than there have been for decades. Many lack stable families and adequate supervision. These children will soon enter their prime crime years. As a result, there may be an increase in youth violence zero. The recent uptick in murders gives support to Fox's projections. Fox's predictions are persuasive, but not all crime experts believe that an age-driven crime wave is forthcoming. Some, such as Stephen Levitt, dispute the fact that the population's age makeup contributes as much to the crime rate as has been suggested by Fox and others. 1. Even if teens commit more crimes in the future, Levitt finds that their contribution may be offset by the aging of the population, which will produce a large number of senior citizens and the elderly, a group with a relatively low crime rate. Such prognostication is reassuring, but there is no telling what changes are in store that may influence crime rates either up or down. Technological developments such as the rapid expansion of internet e-commerce have created new classes of crime. terrorists present a continuing threat. Although crime rates have trended downward, it is too early to predict that this trend will continue into the foreseeable future. Although crime has declined and stabilized for the moment in the United States, it seems to be increasing around the world. The recent boom in crime rates overseas is the subject of the international justice feature, Crime Patterns. Crime experts look for stable crime rate patterns to gain insight into the nature of crime. If crime rates are consistently higher at certain times in certain areas and among certain groups, this knowledge might help explain the onset or cause of crime. For example, if criminal statistics show that crime rates are consistently higher in poor neighborhoods in large urban areas, then crime may be a function of poverty and neighborhood decline. If, in contrast, crime rates are spread evenly across society, this would provide little evidence that crime has an economic basis. Instead, crime might be linked to socialization, personality, intelligence, or some other trait unrelated to class position or income. Rape and sexual assault are not unique to the US. Supporters of the youth wing of the Communist Party of India Marxists listened to a leader while protesting the inability of police to curb a rising rate of sexual abuse of women in New Delhi, India on July 12, 2005. The recent increase in incidents of abuse has shown women of all ages being targeted for sexual assault. The placard reads, "Women, International Crime Trend." India has experienced a shocking form of violence against women known as bride burning. A woman may be burned to death if her family fails to provide the expected dowry to the groom's family or if she is suspected of premarital infidelity. As well, many Indian women commit suicide to escape the brutality of their situation. The danger from various forms of violent behavior, such as bride burning in India, has become a worldwide epidemic. Although crime rates are declining in the United States, they are increasing abroad. The United States in 1980 clearly led the Western world in overall crime, but there has been a marked decline in US crime rates, a trend that has now placed US crime rates below those of other industrial nations, including England and Wales, Denmark and Finland. And contrary to the common assumption that the United States is the most heavily armed nation on earth, there is new evidence that people around the world are arming themselves in record numbers. Residents in the 15 countries of the European Union have an estimated 84 million firearms. Of that total, 67 million, 80% are in civilian hands. With a total European Union population of 375 million people, this amounts to 174 guns for every 100 people. Although these trends are alarming, making international comparisons is often difficult because the legal definitions of crime vary from country to country. There are also differences in the way crime is measured. For example, in the United States, crime may be measured by counting criminal acts reported to the police or by using victim surveys, but many European countries measure crime by the number of cases solved by the police. Despite these problems, valid comparisons can still be made about crime across different countries by using several reliable data sources. For example, the United Nations Survey of Crime Trends and Operations of Criminal Justice Systems, UNCJS, is the most well-known source of information on cross-national data. The International Crime Victims Survey, ICVS, is conducted in 60 countries and is managed by the Ministry of Justice of the Netherlands, the Home Office of the United Kingdom, and the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute. There is also the United Nations International Study on the Regulation of Firearms. Interpol, the International Police Agency, collects data from police agencies in 179 countries. The World Health Organization, WHO, has conducted surveys on global violence. The European Sourcebook of Crime and Criminal Justice Statistics provides data from police agencies in 36 European nations. What do these various sources tell us about international crime rates? Homicide. Many nations, especially those experiencing social or economic upheaval, have murder rates much higher than the US rate. Colombia has about 63 homicides per 100,000 people, and South Africa has 51, compared to less than 6 in the United States. During the 1990s, there were more homicides in Brazil than in the United States, Canada, Italy, Japan, Australia, Portugal, Britain, Austria, and Germany taken together. Why are murder rates so high in nations such as Brazil? Law enforcement officials link the upsurge in violence to drug trafficking, gang feuds, vigilantism, and disputes over trivial matters in which young, unmarried, uneducated males are involved. Rape. Until 1990, US rape rates were higher than those of any other Western nation, but by 2000, Canada took the lead. Generally, violence against women is related to economic hardship and the social status of women. Rates are high in poor nations in which women are oppressed. Where women are more emancipated, the rates of violence against women are lower. For many women, sexual violence starts in childhood and adolescence and may occur in the home, school, and community. Studies conducted in a wide variety of nations, ranging from Cameroon to New Zealand, found high rates of reported forced sexual initiation. In some nations, as many as 46% of adolescent women and 20% of adolescent men report sexual coercion at the hands of family members, teachers, boyfriends, or strangers. Sexual violence has significant health consequences, including suicide, stress, mental illnesses, unwanted pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, HIV/AIDS, self-inflicted injuries, and in the case of child sexual abuse, adoption of high-risk behaviors such as multiple sexual partners and drug use.
Robbery countries with more reported robberies than the United States included England and Wales, Portugal and Spain. Countries with fewer reported robberies included Germany, Italy and France, as well as Middle Eastern and Asian nations. Burglary. The United States had lower burglary rates than Australia, Denmark, Finland, England and Wales, and Canada. It had higher reported burglary rates than Spain, South Korea and Saudi Arabia. Vehicle theft. Australia, England and Wales, Denmark, Norway, Canada, France and Italy now have higher rates of vehicle theft than the United States. Child abuse. A World Health Organization report found that child physical and sexual abuse takes a significant toll around the world. In a single year, about 57,000 children under 15 years old are murdered. The homicide rates for children aged 0 to 4 years were more than twice as high as the rates among children aged 5 to 14 years. Many more children are subjected to non-fatal abuse and neglect. 8% of male and 25% of female children up to age 18 experience sexual abuse of some kind. Why the change? Why are crime rates increasing around the world while leveling off in the United States? In some developing nations, crime rates may be spiraling upward because these nations are undergoing rapid changes in their social and economic makeup. In Eastern Europe, the fall of communism has brought about a transformation of the family, religion, education, and the economy. These changes increase social pressures and result in crime rate. Some Asian societies, such as China, are undergoing rapid industrialization, urbanization, and social change. The shift from agricultural to industrial and service economies has produced political turmoil and a surge in their crime rates. For example, the island of Hong Kong, long a British possession but now part of the People's Republic of China, is experiencing an upsurge in club drugs. Tied to the local dance scene, ecstasy and ketamine use have skyrocketed and are in sync with the traditional drug of choice, heroin. The problems that we experience at home are not unique to the United States. Critical thinking. Although risk factors at all levels of social and personal life contribute to youth violence, youths in all nations who experience change in societal level factors, such as economic inequalities, rapid social change, and the availability of firearms, alcohol and drugs, seem the most likely to get involved in violence. Can anything be done to help alleviate these social problems? Yes, several strategies can help alleviate these social problems. Address economic inequalities. Implement policies promoting economic growth and job creation. Increase access to education and job training. Enhance social welfare programs and support systems. Mitigate rapid social change. Foster community engagement and social cohesion. Develop programs promoting cultural understanding and exchange. Support community-based initiatives addressing social issues. Reduce availability of firearms, alcohol and drugs. Implement and enforce stricter regulations and laws. Increase funding for substance abuse treatment and prevention. Promote community-based initiatives addressing substance abuse. Some potential solutions include investing in early childhood education and intervention programs, implementing evidence-based violence prevention programs, fostering partnerships between community organizations, schools, and law enforcement, addressing systemic issues like racism, poverty, and inequality. 2. The United States is notorious for employing much tougher penal measures than Europe. Do you believe our tougher measures explain why crime is declining in the United States while increasing abroad? Tougher penal measures and crime rates. The relationship between penal measures and crime rates is complex. While some argue that tougher measures deter crime, others point to other factors. Incarceration rates. The US has high incarceration rates, but crime rates have declined since the 1990s. Poverty and inequality. The US has significant poverty and inequality issues, which contribute to crime. Gun laws. Lax gun laws in the US contribute to gun violence. Community-based programs. Effective community-based programs can reduce recidivism and crime. It's unlikely that tougher measures alone explain the decline in US crime rates. Other factors such as improved policing strategies, increased community engagement, economic growth and reduced poverty, shifts in demographics and population trends may also play a role. Europe's approach focuses on rehabilitation and addressing the root causes of crime, which may contribute to its lower crime rates. The ecology of crime is not spread equally across society, and specific patterns in the crime rate seem to be linked to temporal and ecological factors. These factors are stable and unchanging. Day, season, and climate. Most reported crimes occur during the warm summer months of July and August. During the summer, teenagers, who usually have the highest crime levels, are out of school and have a greater opportunity to commit a crime. People spend more time outdoors during warm weather, making themselves easier targets. Similarly, homes are left vacant more often during the summer vacation months, making them more vulnerable to property crimes. Two exceptions to this trend are murders and robberies, which occur frequently in December and January. Crime rates may also be higher on the first day of the month than at any other time. Government welfare and social security checks arrive at this time, and with them come increases in such activities as breaking into mailboxes and accosting recipients on the streets. Also, people may have more disposable income at this time, and the availability of extra money may relate to behaviors associated with crime, such as drinking, partying, and gambling. Temperature weather effects, such as temperature swings, have an impact on crime rates. The human body generates stress hormones, adrenaline and testosterone, in response to excessive heat, an activity that has been linked to aggression. There is agreement that temperature influences crime rates, but there are several alternative explanations for the association. The association between temperature and crime resembles an inverted U-shaped curve. Crime rates increase with rising temperatures and then begin to decline at some point, 85 degrees, when it may be too hot for any physical exertion. Crime rates rise with temperature. The hotter the day, the higher the crime rate. Rising temperature increases some crimes, e.g. domestic assault, but the rate of others, e.g. rape, declines as temperatures rise. Population density. Large urban areas have by far the highest violence rates. Areas with low per capita crime rates tend to be rural. These findings are also supported by victim data. Exceptions to this trend are low population resort areas with large transient or seasonal populations, such as Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Nantucket, Massachusetts. Crime rates vary by region. For many years, southern states have had consistently higher crime rates in almost all crime categories than those found in other regions of the country. These data convinced some crime experts that there was a southern subculture of violence. Although the lead has flip-flopped in recent years between the South and the West, the latest UCR data, illustrated in Figure 26, indicate that Southern crime rates are once again the highest in the nation. Firearms and crime. Firearms play a dominant role in criminal activity. According to the NCVS, firearms are typically involved in about 20% of robberies, 10% of assaults, and more than 5% of rapes. According to the UCR, about 2/3 of all murders involve firearms. Most of these weapons are handguns. Criminals of all races and ethnic backgrounds are equally likely to use guns in violent attacks, and the presence of a weapon increases the likelihood that a violent incident will result in serious injury and/or death. Because of the association between guns and crime, there have been numerous efforts to restrict gun ownership, the most important being the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, enacted on November 30, 1993. Named after Press Secretary James Brady, shot in the attack on President Ronald Reagan, the Brady Law imposes a waiting period of 5 days before a licensed importer, manufacturer, or dealer may sell, deliver, or transfer a handgun to an unlicensed individual. The waiting period applies only in states without an acceptable alternate system of conducting background checks on handgun purchasers. Beginning November 30, 1998, the Brady Law changed, providing an instant check on whether a prospective buyer is prohibited from purchasing a weapon. Federal law bans gun purchases by people convicted of or under indictment for felony charges, fugitives, the mentally ill, those with dishonorable military discharges, those who have renounced U.S. citizenship, illegal aliens, illegal drug users, and those convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors or who are under domestic violence restraining orders, individual state laws may create other restrictions. The Brady Law now requires background approval, not just for handgun buyers, but also for those who buy rifles and shotguns. In addition, the Federal Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994 banned a group of military-style semi-automatic firearms, that is, assault weapons. However, this ban on assault weapons was allowed to lapse in 2004. Debating guns. There is an ongoing debate over gun control. Some experts believe that personal gun use can actually be a crime deterrent. Gary Klock and Mayor Gertz have found that as many as 400,000 people per year also use guns in situations in which they later claim that the guns, almost certainly, saved lives. Even if these estimates are off by a factor of 10, it means that armed citizens may save 40,000 lives annually. Although Kleck and Gertz recognize that guns are involved in murders, suicides and accidents, which claim more than 30,000 lives per year, they believe their benefit as a crime prevention device should not be overlooked. Guns have other uses. In many assaults, the aggressor does not wish to kill, but only scare the victim. Possessing a gun gives aggressors enough killing power so that they may actually be inhibited from attacking. Research by Klock and Karen McElrath found that during a robbery, guns can control the situation without the need for illegal force. Guns may also help victims escape serious injury. Vietins may be inhibited from fighting back without losing face. It is socially acceptable to back down from a challenge if the opponent is armed with a gun. Therefore, guns can de-escalate a potentially violent situation. Kleck, along with Michael Hogan, finds that people who own guns are only slightly more likely to commit homicide than non-owners. The benefits of gun ownership, Kleck concludes, outweigh the costs. Although Kleck's arguments are persuasive, numerous experts disagree with his position and staunchly favor gun control. Franklin Zimring and Gordon Hawkins believe that the proliferation of handguns and the high rate of lethal violence they cause is the single most significant factor separating the crime problem in the United States from the rest of the developed world. Differences between the United States and Europe in non-lethal crimes are only modest at best and getting smaller over time. Empirical research also supports the gun control view. Tomislav Kovanzic and his colleagues used data for all large, population over 100,000, U.S. cities to examine the impact of right-to-carry, concealed handgun laws on violent crime rates from the period 1980 to 2000, and found that carry laws have little effect on local crime rates. And although Kleck's research touts the benefits of defensive gun use, other researchers find that it may have a more limited effect than he believes. Social class and crime. A still unresolved issue in criminological literature is the relationship between social class and crime. Traditionally, crime has been thought of as a lower-class phenomenon. After all, people at the lowest rungs of the social structure have the greatest incentive to commit crimes. Those unable to obtain desired goods and services through conventional means may consequently resort to theft and other illegal activities, such as selling narcotics to obtain them. These activities are referred to as instrumental crimes. Those living in poverty are also believed to engage in disproportionate amounts of expressive crimes, such as rape and assault, as a means of venting their rage and frustration against society. Alcohol and drug abuse, common in impoverished areas, help fuel violent episodes. When measured with UCR data, official statistics indicate that crime rates in inner cities, high poverty areas of severe areas, are generally higher than those in Site-Pura-Beniz, where members of the lower class and unemployed or underemployed were incarcerated in the years before their incarceration. An alternative explanation for these findings is that the relationship between official crime and social class is a function of law enforcement practices, not criminal behavior patterns. Police may devote more resources to poor areas. Consequently, apprehension rates may be higher there. Similarly, police may be more likely to formally arrest and prosecute lower-class citizens than those in the middle and upper classes, which may account for the lower classes' overrepresentation in official statistics and the prison population. Instrumental crimes. Criminal acts are intended to improve the financial or social position of the criminal. Expressive crimes. Criminal acts that serve to vent rage or frustration. Class and self-reports. Self-report data have been widely used to examine the relationship between social class and crime. If people across all social classes report similar patterns of criminal activity, but only those in the lower class are formally arrested. This could explain higher crime rates in lower-income neighborhoods. Conversely, if lower-class individuals report more criminal behavior than their middle and upper-class counterparts, it would suggest that official statistics accurately reflect the crime problem. Surprisingly, early self-report studies from the 1950s, especially those by James Short and F. Ivan Nye, did not find a direct link between social class and youth crime. They discovered that socioeconomic status was related to how the police, courts, and correctional institutions processed offenders, but not to the actual commission of crime. In other words, although lower and middle-class youths reported committing similar amounts of crime, lower-class youths were more likely to be arrested, convicted, and incarcerated, thus becoming official delinquents. Additionally, factors commonly associated with lower-class status, such as broken homes, were linked to institutionalization, but not to admissions of delinquency. Other studies from that period reached similar conclusions. For more than 20 years after self-report surveys became widespread, most studies concluded that there was no meaningful class-crime relationship. If lower-income individuals had more extensive criminal records than wealthier individuals, this was usually attributed to differences in law enforcement rather than actual behavior based on social class. In other words, police might be more prone to arrest lower-class offenders and treat affluent offenders more leniently. Nearly 30 years ago, Charles Tittle, Wayne Villemez, and Douglas Smith authored what is still considered the seminal review of the link between class and crime. They found little, if any, support for the idea that crime is predominantly a lower-class issue. As a result, Tittle and colleagues argued that official statistics likely reflect bias in processing lower-class offenders. In a subsequent paper with Robert Meyer, Tittle revisited existing data on the class-crime relationship and again found minimal evidence of a consistent association. More recent self-report studies generally support Tittle's conclusions. There is no clear connection between social class and crime. Tittle's findings have generated substantial debate within criminology. Many self-report surveys include minor offences such as using false IDs or alcohol consumption, which could skew results. Wealthier youths may frequently commit petty crimes like theft, drug use, and minor assault, but rarely escalate to more serious criminal activity. Those advocating for a class crime link argue that a notable association appears when only serious felonies, like burglary and assault, are examined. Some studies find that when focusing solely on serious crimes, lower-class youths are significantly more likely to engage in delinquency. The class crime controversy. The relationship between class and crime is an important one for criminological theory. If crime is related to social class, then it follows that economic and social factors, such as poverty and neighborhood disorganization, cause criminal behavior. One reason that a true measure of the class-crime relationship has so far eluded crime experts is that the methods employed to determine social class vary widely. For example, the father's occupation and education are only weakly related to self-reported crime, but unemployment or receiving welfare is a more significant predictor of criminality. The association between class and crime could also be more complex than a simple linear relationship. That is, the poorer you are, the more crime you commit. Class may affect some subgroups in the population, e.g. women, African Americans, more than it does others, e.g. males, whites. Sally Simpson and Laurie Ellis found that white females are more likely to be influenced by social class than are minority females. They speculate that white females have had their financial expectations significantly raised because of the women's movement, which had less effect on minority women. Therefore, white females are more likely to turn to crime when their expectations of wealth are not met. In light of these findings, it is not surprising that the true relationship between class and crime is difficult to determine. The effect may be obscured because its impact varies within and between groups. Like so many other criminological controversies, the debate over the true relationship between class and crime will most likely persist. The weight of recent evidence seems to suggest that serious official crime is more prevalent among the lower classes, whereas less serious and self-reported crime is spread more evenly throughout the social structure. Income inequality, poverty, and resource deprivation are all associated with the most serious violent crimes, including homicide and assault. Members of the lower class are more likely to suffer psychological perspectives on justice. Rehabilitation advocates believe that social class is correlated with crime, and that the key to reducing crime rates is not punishment, but programs that emphasize jobs, counseling, and opportunity. Abnormality, including high rates of anxiety and conduct disorders, conditions that may promote criminality. General agreement exists that age is inversely related to criminality. Regardless of economic status, marital status, race, sex, and so on, younger people commit crimes more often than older people. Research indicates that this relationship has been stable across time periods, ranging from 1935 to the present. Official statistics reveal that young people are arrested at a disproportionate rate compared to their numbers in the population. Victim surveys generate similar findings for crimes in which the assailant's age can be determined. Whereas youths aged 13 to 17 collectively make up about 6% of the total US population, they account for about 25% of Part 1 crime arrests and 17% of arrests for all crimes. As a general rule, the peak age for property crime is believed to be 16, and for violence, 18, see figure 27. In contrast, adults 45 and over, who make up 32% of the population, account for only 7% of Part 1 crime arrests. The elderly are particularly resistant to the temptations of crime. They make up more than 12% of the population and less than 1% of arrests. Elderly males 65 and over are predominantly arrested for alcohol-related matters, public drunkenness and drunk driving, and elderly females for larceny, shoplifting. The elderly crime rate has remained stable for the past 20 years, as shown in gender and crime. The 3 data-gathering criminal statistics tools support the theory that male crime rates are much higher than those of females. Victims report that their assailant was male in more than 80% of all violent personal crimes. According to the Uniform Crime Report's arrest statistics, the overall male-female arrest ratio is about 35 male offenders to 1 female offender. For serious violent crimes, the ratio is closer to 5 males to 1 female. Murder arrests are 8-1 male. Recent self-report data collected by the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan also show that males commit more serious crimes, such as robbery, assault, and burglary, than females do. However, although the patterns in self-reports parallel official data, the ratios are smaller. In other words, males self-report more criminal behavior than females, but not to the degree suggested by official data. Traits and temperament. Early crime experts pointed to emotional, physical, and psychological differences between males and females to explain the differences in crime rates. Cesare Lombroso's 1895 book, The Female Offender, argued that a small group of female criminals lacked typical female traits, such as piety, maternity, undeveloped intelligence, and weakness. In physical appearance as well as in their emotional makeup, delinquent females appeared closer to men than to other women. Lombroso's theory became known as the masculinity hypothesis. In essence, a few masculine females were responsible for the handful of crimes that women commit. Another early view of female crime focused on the supposed dynamics of sexual relationships. Female criminals were viewed as either sexually controlling or sexually naive, either manipulating men for profit or being manipulated by them. The female's criminality was often masked because criminal justice authorities were reluctant to take action against a woman. This perspective is known as the chivalry hypothesis, which holds that much female criminality is hidden because of US culture's generally protective and benevolent attitude toward women. In other words, police are less likely to arrest, juries are less likely to convict, and judges are less likely to incarcerate female offenders. Although these early writings are no longer taken seriously, some crime experts still consider trait differences a key determinant of crime rate differences. For example, some crime experts link antisocial behavior to hormonal influences by arguing that male sex hormones, androgens, account for more aggressive male behavior. That gender-related hormonal differences can also explain the gender gap in the crime rate, 90. Socialization and development. Another view is that, unlike boys, a majority of young girls are socialized to avoid being violent and aggressive and are supervised more closely by parents. It comes as no surprise when research shows that most girls develop moral values that strongly discourage antisocial behavior. The few female criminals are troubled individuals, alienated at home, who pursue crime as a means of compensating for their disrupted personal lives. The streets are a second home to girls whose physical and emotional adjustment was hampered by a strained home life, marked by such conditions as absent fathers and overly competitive mothers. For example, Emily Garder and Joanne Belknap have found that many delinquent girls sent to adult prisons had troubled lives that set them on a criminal career path. One girl told them how her father had attacked her, yet her mother shortly let him return home. I told her I'd leave if he came back, but she let him anyway. I was thinking, she should be worrying about me. I left and went to my cousin's house. Nobody even called me. Mom didn't talk to me for 2 weeks, and Dad said to me, "Don't call." It was like they didn't care. I started smoking weed a lot then, drinking, skipping school, and shoplifting. I had no delinquency record before this happened. Some experts explain these differences in socialization by pointing to gender-based differences in human development that help shape behavior choices. Girls are believed to have cognitive traits that shield them from criminal behaviors. Cognitive differences. Psychologists note significant cognitive differences between boys and girls that may affect their antisocial behaviors. Girls are superior to boys in verbal ability, yet boys test higher in visual spatial performance. Girls acquire language faster, learning to speak earlier and with better pronunciation. Girls are far less likely to have reading problems than boys, whereas boys do much better on standardized math tests. This difference is attributed by some experts to boys receiving more attention from math teachers. In most cases, these cognitive differences are small, narrow, and usually attributed to cultural expectations. Their superior verbal skills may allow girls to talk rather than fight. When faced with conflict, women might be more likely to attempt to negotiate than to either respond passively or to physically resist, especially when they perceive increased threat of harm or death. Liberal feminist theory. An ideology holding that women suffer oppression, discrimination, and disadvantage as a result of their sex, and calling for gender equality in pay, opportunity, childcare, and education. Feminist views. In the 1970s, feminists focused attention on the social and economic role of women in society and its relationship to female crime rates. 95. Liberal feminist theory suggested that the traditionally lower crime rate for women could be explained by their second-class economic and social position. As women's social roles changed and their lifestyles became more like those of males, it was believed that their crime rates would converge. Crime experts, responding to this research, began to refer to the new female criminal, the rapid increase in the female crime rate during the 1960s and 1970s, especially in what had traditionally been male-oriented crimes, such as burglary and larceny, supported the feminist view. In addition, self-report studies seem to indicate that the pattern of female criminality, if not its frequency, is similar to that of male criminality, and that the factors predisposing male criminals to crime have an equal impact on female criminals. 96. Crime experts began to assess the association among economic issues, gender roles, and criminality. Is convergence likely? In some, gender differences in the crime rate have been explained by such statements as these. Males are stronger and better able to commit violent crime. Hormonal differences make males more aggressive. Girls are socialized to be less aggressive than boys. 9T. Girls have better verbal skills and use them to diffuse conflict. Boys are granted greater personal freedom. Girls are subject to greater parental control. However, these views are now being challenged by the rapid rise in the female crime rate. 98. As gender role differences at home, school, and the workplace have narrowed, so have crime rates. As a result, there has been a rise in female participation in traditionally male-oriented forms of criminality, such as violent crime and juvenile gang membership. 99. Will the gender differences in the crime rate eventually dissolve? Some crime experts find that gender-based crime rate differences remain significant and argue that the emancipation of women has had relatively little influence on female crime rates. 100. They dispute the idea that increases in the female arrest rate reflect economic or social change brought about by the women's movement. For one thing, many female criminals come from the socio-economic class least affected by the women's movement. Their crimes seem more a function of economic inequality than women's rights. For another, the offence patterns of women are still quite different from those of men, who commit a disproportionate share of serious crimes, such as robbery, burglary, murder, and assault. According to Daryl Steffensmeyer and his associates, recent trends may be explained more by changes in police activity than in criminal activity. Police today may be more willing to arrest girls for crimes. 102. Police may be abandoning their traditional deference toward women in an effort to be gender neutral. In addition, new laws such as dual arrest laws in domestic cases, which mandate that both parties be taken into custody, result in more women suffering arrest in domestic incidents. 103. Whether male and female crime rates will eventually converge remains to be seen. In addition, new laws such as dual arrest laws in domestic cases, which mandate that both parties be taken into custody, result in more women suffering arrest in domestic incidents. 103. Whether male and female crime rates will eventually converge remains to be seen. Race and crime. Official crime data indicate that minority group members are involved in a disproportionate share of criminal activity. According to UCR reports, African Americans make up about 12% of the general population, yet they account for about 39% of Part 1 violent crime arrests and 29% of property crime arrests. They are also responsible for a disproportionate number of Part 2 arrests, except for alcohol-related arrests, which detain primarily white offenders. These data could reflect racial differences in the crime rate, but they could also reflect police bias in the arrest process. This issue can be evaluated by comparing racial differences in self-report data with those found in official delinquency records. Charges of racial discrimination in the arrest process would be substantiated if whites and blacks self-reported equal numbers of crimes, but minorities were arrested far more often. Early efforts found virtually no relationship between race and self-reported delinquency. 4. These research efforts supported a case for police bias in the arrest decision. Other, more recent self-report studies that use large national samples of youths have also found little evidence of racial disparity in crimes committed. The Monitoring the Future self-report survey found that, if anything, black youth self-report less delinquent behavior and substance abuse than whites. 105. These and other self-report studies seem to indicate that the delinquent behavior rates of black and white teenagers are generally similar, and that differences in arrest statistics may indicate a differential selection policy by. Racial differences in the crime rate remain an extremely sensitive issue. Although official arrest records indicate that African Americans are arrested at a higher rate than members of other racial groups, some question whether this is a function of crime rate differences, racism by police, or faulty data collection. 107 research shows that suspects who are poor, minority, and male are more likely to be formally arrested than suspects who are white, affluent, and female. 108. Some critics charge that police officers routinely use racial profiling to stop African Americans and search their cars without probable cause or reasonable suspicion. Some cynics have gone so far as to suggest that police officers have created a new form of traffic offense called DWB, driving while black. 109. Although the UCR may reflect discriminatory police practices, African Americans are arrested for a disproportionate amount of violent crime, such as robbery and murder, and police discretion alone is unlikely to account for these proportions. It is doubtful that police routinely ignore white killers, robbers, and rapists while arresting violent black offenders. Recent research by Stuart J. D'Alessio and Lisa Stolzenberg, using data from the National Incident-Based Reporting System, found that the odds of arrest for white offenders are approximately 22% higher for robbery, 13% higher for aggravated assault, and 9% higher for simple assault than they are for black offenders. Race is not related to rape arrests. Their findings suggest that the fact that African Americans account for a disproportionately high percentage of serious crime arrests is most likely attributable to differential involvement in reported crime, not to racially biased law enforcement practices. If these findings are accurate, how can the racial differences in the crime rate be explained? O perspectives on justice. Due process. Advocates of the due process perspective are especially sensitive to charges of racial bias and have drawn attention to the practice of racial profiling, racism, and discrimination. Most crime experts focus on the impact of economic deprivation and the legacy of racism and discrimination on personality and behavior. Evan L. The fact that U.S. culture influences African American crime rates is underscored by the fact that black violence rates are much lower in other nations, both those that are predominantly white, such as Canada, and those that are predominantly black, such as Nigeria. Some crime experts view black erimé as a function of socialization in a society where the black family was torn apart and black culture destroyed by slavery in such a way that recovery has proved impossible. Early experiences have left a wound that has been deepened by racism and lack of opportunity. Children of the slave society were thrust into a system of forced dependency and ambivalence and antagonism toward oneself and one's group. Today, the cohesiveness of the African American family is affected by the low employment rates among African American males, which places a strain on marriages. The relatively large number of single, female-headed households in these communities may be tied to the high mortality rate among African American males, due in part to their increased risk of early death by disease and violence. 114. When families are weakened or disrupted, their social control is compromised. Therefore, it is not surprising that divorce and separation rates are significantly associated with homicide rates in the African American community. However, even among at-risk African American kids growing up in communities categorized by poverty, high unemployment levels, and single-parent households, those who manage to live in stable families with sufficient income and educational achievement are much less likely to engage in violent behaviors than those lacking family support. Institutional racism. Racism is still an element of daily life in the African American community, a factor that undermines faith in social and political institutions and weakens confidence in the justice system. Such fears are supported by empirical evidence that, at least in some jurisdictions, young African American males are treated more harshly by the criminal and juvenile justice systems than are members of any other group. According to the racial threat theory, as the percentage of African Americans in the population increases, so does the amount of social control that police direct at blacks. The racial threat theory has received only mixed support, but a significant body of research shows that the justice system may be racially biased. 119. Police are more likely to formally arrest minority group members, and because African Americans are more likely to become the focus of unwarranted police attention, they are more likely to obtain a prior criminal record and consequently be eligible for more severe punishments than Caucasian youths if they are rearrested. 120. Research shows that Black and Latino adults are less likely to receive bail in violent crime cases than whites, and that minority juveniles are more likely to be kept in detention pending trial in juvenile court. African Americans, especially those who are indigent or unemployed, receive longer prison sentences than whites with the same employment status. Judges could be imposing harsher punishments on unemployed African Americans because they view them as social dynamite, considering them more dangerous and more likely to recidivate than white offenders too. Yet when African Americans are victims of crime, their predicament receives less public concern and media attention than that afforded to white victims. Differential enforcement practices take their toll on the African American community. One national survey found that more than 13% of all African American males have lost the right to vote, that in 7 states, 25% have been disenfranchised, and that in 2 states, Florida and Alabama, 33% of African American males have lost their voting privileges. So it is not surprising that African Americans of all social classes hold negative attitudes toward the justice system and view it as an arbitrary and unfair institution. Economic and social disparity. Racial differentials in crime rates may also be tied to economic disparity. Blacks and whites face different economic and social realities. African Americans typically have higher unemployment rates and lower incomes than whites. They face a greater degree of social isolation and economic deprivation, a condition that has been linked by empirical research to high murder rates. Many black youths are forced to attend essentially segregated schools that are underfunded and deteriorated, a condition that elevates the likelihood of their being incarcerated in adulthood. Not helping the situation is that during tough economic times, blacks and whites may find themselves competing for shrinking job opportunities. As economic competition between the races grows, interracial homicides do likewise. Economic and political rivalries lead to greater levels of interracial violence. Even during times of economic growth, lower-class African Americans are left out of the economic mainstream, a fact that meets with a growing sense of frustration and failure. As a result of being shut out of educational and economic opportunities enjoyed by the rest of society, this population may be prone, some believe, to the lure of illegitimate gain and criminality. Young African American males in the inner city often are resigned to a lifetime of little or no social and economic opportunity. Even when economic data say they are doing better, news accounts of protests, riots, and acts of civil disobedience tell them otherwise. African Americans living in slums may be disproportionately violent because they are exposed to more violence in their daily lives than are other racial and economic groups. This exposure is a significant risk factor for violent behavior. In sum, many African American families are forced to reside in some of the nation's poorest communities, which cannot provide economic opportunities. The resulting economic inequality increases the incentive to commit a crime. African American crime is motivated more by economic necessity than by anger, strain, and rage. Is convergence possible? Considering these overwhelming social problems, is it possible that racial crime rates will soon converge? One argument is that if economic conditions improve in the minority community, then differences in crime rates will eventually disappear. Sociologist Julie Phillips found that if whites were subjected to the same economic and social disabilities as minorities, interracial homicide rate differences would be dramatically reduced. All of the white-Latino homicide differential and about half of the white-black homicide gap would evaporate if the social and economic characteristics of minorities were improved to levels currently enjoyed by whites. A trend toward residential integration, underway since 1980, may also help reduce crime rate differentials. Despite economic disparity, too are racial differences evident in attitudes toward crime and justice today. Convergence in crime rates will occur if economic and social obstacles can be removed. In sum, the weight of the evidence shows that, although little difference exists in the self-reported crime rates of racial groups, African Americans are more likely to be arrested for serious violent crimes. The causes of minority crime have been linked to poverty, racism, hopelessness, lack of opportunity, and urban problems experienced by all too many African American citizens. Career criminals. Persistent repeat offenders who organize their lifestyle around criminality. Chronic offenders. As defined by Marvin Wolfgang, Robert Figlio, and Thorsten Sellin, delinquents who are arrested 5 or more times before the age of 18 and who commit a disproportionate amount of all criminal offences. Careers and crime data show that most offenders commit a single criminal act and upon arrest discontinue their antisocial activity. Others commit a few less serious crimes, but a small group of criminal offenders accounts for a majority of all criminal offences. These persistent offenders are referred to as career criminals or chronic offenders. The concept of the chronic or career offender is most closely associated with the research efforts of Marvin Wolfgang, Robert Figlio, and Thorsten Sellin. In their landmark 1972 study, Delinquency in a Birth Cohort, they used official records to follow the criminal careers of a cohort of 9,945 boys from the time of their birth in Philadelphia in 1945 until they reached 18 years of age in 1963. Official police records were used to identify delinquents, with about 1/3 of the boys, 3,475, having some police contact, and the remaining 2/3, 6,470, had none. Each delinquent was given a seriousness weight score for every delinquent act, differentiating between simple assault and serious battery, requiring hospitalization. The best-known discovery of Wolfgang and his associates was that of the so-called chronic offender. The cohort data indicated that 54%, 1,862 of the delinquent youths were repeat offenders, whereas 46%, 1,613 were one-time offenders. The repeaters could be categorized as non-chronic recidivists and chronic recidivists, based on arrest frequency. Non-chronic recidivists consisted of 1,235 youths arrested more than once, but fewer than 5 times, making up 356% of all delinquents. Chronic recidivists were 627 boys arrested 5 times or more, accounting for 18% of delinquents and 6% of the total sample. The chronic career criminals, known today as the chronic 6%, were involved in the most delinquent behavior. They were responsible for 305 offences, or 519% of all offences committed by the cohort. Strikingly, they committed 71% of homicides, 73% of rapes, 82% of robberies, and 69% of aggravated assaults. Wolfgang and colleagues found that arrests and court experiences did little to deter the chronic offender. Behavior. Punishment was inversely related to chronic offending, meaning stricter sanctions often led to more repeated criminal behavior. In a second cohort study, Wolfgang and colleagues studied a new, larger birth cohort born in Philadelphia in 1958, including both males and females. Although the delinquent youth proportion was similar to the 1945 cohort, patterns of chronic offending persisted. Chronic female delinquency was rare, with only 1% of females being chronic offenders. Wolfgang's pioneering work has been replicated in various U.S. locations and abroad, confirming the existence of the chronic offender. Career criminals are responsible for a significant portion of total crime. George Hyatt, 34, an inmate serving a 41-year sentence for robbery, appeared in court for an extradition hearing in Columbus, Ohio. Hyatt and his wife, Jennifer Hyatt, were arrested after a cab driver tipped authorities they were at the America's Best Value Inn. Hyatt, involved in a daring escape attempt and serving time for robbery, killed a guard, which might lead to the death penalty. Who are career criminals? Who is at risk of becoming a career criminal? As might be expected, youths who have been exposed to a variety of personal and social problems at an early age are the most at risk for repeat offending. Other research studies have found that involvement in criminal activity, for example getting arrested before age 15, relatively low intellectual development, and parental drug involvement were key predictive factors for chronicity. Children who are found to be disruptive and antisocial. Children as early as age 5 or 6 are the most likely to exhibit stable, long-term patterns of disruptive behavior throughout adolescence. They have measurable behavior problems in areas such as learning and motor skills, cognitive abilities, family relations, and other areas of social, psychological, and physical functioning. 143. Youthful offenders who persist are more likely to abuse alcohol, become economically dependent, have lower aspirations, and have a weak employment record. They do not specialize in one type of crime. Instead, they engage in a variety of criminal acts, including theft, drugs, and violent offenses. Implications of the career criminal concept. Concern about repeat offenders has been translated into programs at various stages of the justice process. To meet the challenge, police departments and district attorneys' offices around the nation have set up programs to focus resources on capturing and prosecuting dangerous or repeat offenders. Legal jurisdictions are developing sentencing policies designed to incapacitate chronic offenders for long periods of time without hope of probation or parole. Among the policies spurred by the chronic offender concept are mandatory sentences for violent or drug-related crimes and 3 strikes laws, which require people convicted of a 3rd felony offence to serve a mandatory life sentence. Whether such policies can reduce crime rates or are merely get-tough measures designed to placate conservative voters remains to be seen. Perspectives on justice. Crime control. The discovery of the chronic offender was a key element in the development of sentences that provide extended terms for repeat offenders. It stands to reason that if only a few hardcore offenders commit most crimes, locking them up for life can have a dramatic effect on the crime rate. This is a cornerstone of the crime control model. 3 strikes laws. Sentencing codes require that an offender receive a life sentence after conviction for a 3rd felony. Some states allow parole after a lengthy prison stay, for example 25 years. Ethical challenges in criminal justice. A writing assignment. Rudolph's criminal acts might be classified as hate crimes. Each defines this type of crime differently. Here is a section of the California Hate Crime Statute, which states in part, California Penal Code Section 4226. 4226. A. No person, whether or not acting under colour of law, shall by force or threat of force, willfully injure, intimidate, interfere with, oppress, or threaten any other person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him or her by the Constitution or laws of this state, or by the Constitution or laws of the United States, because of the other person's race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, disability, gender, or sexual orientation, or because he or she perceives that the other person has one or more of those characteristics. Write an essay discussing the issue of whether it is fair and just to punish more severely someone who commits a crime motivated by hate than one motivated by greed, jealousy, or revenge. Consider such issues as morality, legality, and practicality. For example, how can we prove that someone was motivated by hate and not anger? The complex issue of hate crime sentencing, fairness, justice, and practicality. The question of whether to punish hate crimes more severely than crimes motivated by other factors, such as greed, jealousy, or revenge, is a contentious issue that raises concerns about morality, legality, and practicality. On one hand, hate crimes are often considered more egregious because they target individuals or groups based on inherent characteristics such as race, religion, or sexual orientation, causing harm beyond the immediate victim. On the other hand, determining motivation can be challenging, and some argue that enhanced penalties may infringe upon free speech and thought. Morality. Hate crimes are often seen as attacks on the very identity of the victim, causing psychological trauma and a sense of vulnerability. Many argue that the added harm and impact on the community justify harsher penalties. For example, the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting (UCR) program defines hate crimes as criminal offenses motivated by bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or other protected characteristic. However, others argue that all violent crimes are equally reprehensible, regardless of motivation. They contend that focusing on hate crimes may divert resources from other serious crimes and create a hierarchy of victimhood. Legality. In the United States, hate crime laws, such as the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, enhance penalties for crimes motivated by bias. To prove hate motivation, prosecutors often rely on circumstantial evidence such as the defendant's statements or writings, the victim's and defendant's backgrounds, the context of the crime. However, determining motivation can be complex, and defendants may argue that their actions were motivated by factors other than hate. Practicality. Critics argue that hate crime laws are difficult to enforce and may lead to inconsistent sentencing. For instance, how do we distinguish between a hate crime and a crime committed in the heat of the moment? Moreover, some argue that enhanced penalties may discourage defendants from pleading guilty or lead to increased violence if perpetrators perceive themselves as victims. On the other hand, proponents argue that hate crime laws serve as a deterrent and provide justice for victims and their families. They also highlight the importance of acknowledging the harm caused by hate crimes and promoting community healing. Comparison of approaches. Approach, advantages, disadvantages. And enhanced penalties for hate crimes. Acknowledges harm, deters hate crimes. Difficult to prove motivation may infringe on free speech. And equal penalties for all crimes. Simplifies sentencing, focuses on harm caused. May minimize impact of hate crimes. Restorative justice approaches. Addresses root causes, promotes healing. May not provide adequate punishment. In conclusion, the issue of hate crime sentencing is complex, with valid arguments on both sides. While some argue that enhanced penalties are necessary to address the unique harm caused by hate crimes, others raise concerns about fairness, legality, and practicality. Ultimately, the decision to punish hate crimes more severely depends on societal values, the effectiveness of current laws, and the ability to balance justice, fairness, and practicality. Final answer. There is no straightforward answer, as the fairness and justice of punishing hate crimes more severely depend on various factors and perspectives.
Crime Statistics Challenge. Test your knowledge of crime statistics with these interactive multiple-choice questions.
Question 1. What are the 3 primary sources of crime statistics?
A. Police reports, victim surveys, and census data. B. Uniform crime reports, self-reports, and victim surveys. C. Court records, prison data, and FBI reports. D. Newspaper articles, police blads, and online forums. Answer. B. Uniform crime reports, self-reports, and victim surveys. Explanation. The three primary sources of crime statistics are the Uniform Crime Reports, UCR, self-reports from criminal behavior surveys, and victim surveys. These sources provide valuable information about crime rates and trends. Question 2. What is a common pattern in crime rates across different areas? A. Crime rates are highest in urban areas. B. Crime rates are highest in rural areas. C. Crime rates vary by region, with some areas more prone to crime. D. Crime rates are the same across all areas. Answer. C. Crime rates vary by region, with some areas more prone to crime. Explanation. Ecological patterns show that some areas of the country are more crime-prone than others. This variation can be due to factors such as poverty, population density, and social inequality. Question 3. Which demographic group is most likely to commit crimes? A. Young women. B. Older men. C. Young men. D. Middle-aged women. Answer. C. Young men. Explanation. Evidence indicates men commit more crimes than women, and young people commit more than the elderly. This pattern holds across different cultures and societies. Question 4. What is a chronic offender? A. A person who commits a single serious crime. B. A person who commits multiple crimes over a short period. C. A repeat career criminal responsible for a significant share of law violations. D. A person falsely accused of a crime. Answer. C. A repeat career criminal responsible for a significant share of law violations. Explanation. Chronic offenders commit multiple crimes over time, often starting young. They are responsible for a disproportionate amount of crime and tend to continue offending into adulthood. Score 4-4. You got all questions correct. Summary. The three primary sources of crime statistics are the Uniform Crime Reports, based on police data collected by the FBI, self-reports from criminal behavior surveys, and victim surveys. These sources reveal significant crime levels in the U.S., though violent crime is decreasing. Despite strengths and weaknesses, the sources agree on the nature of criminal behavior. The data show stable crime patterns across regions, seasons, and times. Ecological patterns highlight that some areas are more crime-prone due to various social factors. Gender and age gaps exist. Men commit more crimes than women. Young people commit more than the elderly. A crime tends to decline with age, but reasons for this are not fully understood. Racial and socioeconomic patterns appear but may be influenced by enforcement biases. A key finding is the chronic offender, a persistent criminal responsible for much law violation. These career criminals start young and often continue their criminal activities into adulthood. Here are the definitions for the key terms. 1. Hate crimes. Crimes motivated by bias or prejudice against a particular group, such as racial or ethnic minorities, based on characteristics like race, religion, or sexual orientation. 2. Public order crimes. Crimes that disturb the peace and order of a community, such as disorderly conduct, public intoxication, or loitering. 3. White-collar crime. Crimes committed by individuals or businesses in a professional or occupational setting, often involving deceit, fraud, or exploitation, such as embezzlement or bribery. Or corporate crime. Crimes committed by corporations or businesses, often involving violations of laws or regulations, such as environmental pollution or antitrust violations. 5. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. A system used by the FBI to collect and report crime data from law enforcement agencies across the United States. 6. Part 1. Crimes. Serious crimes, such as murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault that are reported to the FBI and included in the UCRs. 7. Part 2. Crimes. Less serious crimes, such as simple assault, vandalism, and larceny that are reported to the FBI and included in the UCRs. To cleared. A crime is considered cleared when it has been solved or disposed of, often through an arrest or conviction. 9. National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. A system used by the FBI to collect and report crime data, providing more detailed information about crimes than the UCRs. 10. National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS. A survey conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics to gather information about crime victims and their experiences. 11. Self-report survey. A research method where individuals are asked to report their own behaviors or attitudes, often used to study crime and delinquency. 12. Instrumental crimes. Crimes committed for personal gain or profit, such as theft or robbery. 13. Expressive crimes. Crimes committed for emotional or psychological reasons, such as assault or vandalism. 14. Masculinity hypothesis. A theory of crime that suggests that men are more likely to commit crimes because of societal expectations and pressures to conform to traditional masculine norms. 15. Chivalry hypothesis. A theory that suggests that women are treated more leniently by the criminal justice system because of societal attitudes towards women as weaker and more vulnerable. 16. Liberal feminist theory. A theory that suggests that women's crime is influenced by societal and economic factors, such as inequality and lack of opportunities. 17. Racial threat theory. A theory that suggests that the criminal justice system is biased against certain racial or ethnic groups, leading to unequal treatment and outcomes. 18. Career criminals. Individuals who commit crimes as a career or lifestyle, often starting at a young age and continuing throughout their lives. 19. Chronic offenders. Individuals who commit a disproportionate number of crimes, often starting at a young age and continuing throughout their lives. 20. Three strikes law. A law that requires mandatory life sentences for individuals who commit 3 serious crimes, often used to target repeat offenders. Crime Statistics Challenge. Test your knowledge of crime statistics with these interactive multiple-choice questions. Question 1. What type of crime is motivated by bias or prejudice against a particular group? A. Instrumental crime. B. Expressive crime. C. Hate crime. D. White-collar crime. Answer: C. Hate crime. Question 2. What is the term for crimes that disturb the peace and order of a community? A. Public order crimes. B. Part 1 crimes. C. Part 2 crimes. D. White-collar crimes. Answer: A. Public order crimes. Question 3. What type of crime is committed by individuals or businesses in a professional or occupational setting? A. White-collar crime. B. Corporate crime. C. Public order crime. D. Part 2 crime. Answer: A. White-collar crime. Question 4. What is the name of the system used by the FBI to collect and report crime data? A. National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS. B. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. C. National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. D. Self-Report Survey. Answer: B. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. Question 5. What type of crime is considered more serious and is reported to the FBI? A. Part 1 crime. B. Part 2 crime. Answer: A. Part 1 crime. Question 6. What is the term for a crime that has been solved or disposed of? A. Cleared. B. Part 1 crime. C. Part 2 crime. D. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. Answer: A. Cleared. Question 7. What is the name of the survey that asks individuals about their experiences with crime? C. Self-Report Survey. D. National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. Answer: A. National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS. Question 8. What type of crime is committed for personal gain or profit? Answer: A. Instrumental crime. Question 9. What is the term for crimes committed for emotional or psychological reasons? A. Expressive crimes. B. Instrumental crimes. C. Public order crimes. D. Corporate crimes. Answer: A. Expressive crimes. Question 10. What is the name of the theory that suggests men are more likely to commit crimes because of societal expectations? A. Masculinity hypothesis. B. Chivalry hypothesis. C. Liberal feminist theory. D. Racial threat theory. Answer: A. Masculinity hypothesis. Question 11. What is the term for the idea that women are treated more leniently by the criminal justice system? A. chivalry hypothesis. B. Masculinity hypothesis. Answer: A. Chivalry hypothesis. Question 12. What is the name of the theory that suggests women's crime is influenced by societal and economic factors? A. Liberal feminist theory. C. Chivalry hypothesis. Answer: A. Liberal feminist theory. Question 13. What is the term for the idea that the criminal justice system is biased against certain racial or ethnic groups? A. Racial threat theory. B. Liberal feminist theory. C. Masculinity hypothesis. D. Chivalry hypothesis. Answer: A. Racial threat theory. Question 14. What is the term for individuals who commit crimes as a career or lifestyle? A. Career criminals. B. Chronic offenders. C. Three strikes offenders. D. Public order offenders. Answer: A. Career criminals. Question 15. What is the term for individuals who commit a disproportionate number of crimes? A. Chronic offenders. B. Career criminals. Answer: A. Chronic offenders. Question 16. What is the name of the law that requires mandatory life sentences for individuals who commit 3 serious crimes? A. Three strikes law. B. Chronic offender law. C. Career criminal law. D. Public order law. Answer: A. Three strikes law. Question 17. What is the name of the system used to classify crimes as either Part 1 or Part 2 offenses? A. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. B. National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. C. National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS. D. FBI Crime Classification System. Answer: A. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. Question 18. What type of crime is most likely to be committed by individuals with high levels of education and socioeconomic status? A. Violent crime. B. Property crime. C. White-collar crime. D. Corporate crime. Answer: C. White-collar crime. Question 19. What is the term for crimes committed by corporations or businesses? Answer: B. Corporate crime. Question 20. What is the name of the research method where individuals are asked to report their own behaviors or attitudes? A. Self-report survey. B. National Crime Victimization Survey, NCVS. C. Uniform Crime Reports, UCRs. Answer: A. Self-report survey. Congratulations! You answered all 20 questions correctly.